All right, let's get into it. Today, we're going to take a look at something absolutely fundamental to justice in Malaysia, how the government is structured to keep things balanced. So stick around and we'll break down exactly how the whole system works. Now, before we dive in, I've got to give a quick and very important credit. This explainer we're going through was created by Zuramasnam Sayanan, who is a senior lecturer of UITM Johor. So let's kick things off with a big question. How do you actually design a government that's strong enough to get things done, but not so strong that it becomes, well, too powerful and starts to abuse that power? It's a real puzzle, isn't it? Well, the answer to that puzzle, not just for Malaysia, but for a lot of countries, comes down to one core idea. It's all about splitting power up, not just in half, but actually into three separate, distinct parts. And this idea has a name. It's called the doctrine of separation of powers. Really, the concept is pretty simple when you think about it. It's like that old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Instead of giving one group all the power, you split it up between different branches. Each branch has its own job, its own area of responsibility. And the whole point? It makes sure no single group can get total control. It's kind of like a built-in safety switch for the whole system. Yup, 3. That's the magic number here. We're talking 3 totally independent branches, and they're all designed to keep an eye on each other, to check and balance each other's power. Okay, so let's get to know the first 2 parts of this government trio. A good way to think about them is like this. You've got the team that literally writes the rule book, and then you've got the team that makes sure everyone actually plays by those rules. So on one side, you've got the legislative branch. These are the folks in the federal parliament and the state legislative assemblies. Their one big job? To make the laws. Then you've got the executive branch, which is the cabinet of ministers. What do? They take those laws and they administer, implement, and enforce them. So yeah, one group makes the rules, the other group makes sure they're actually followed. Simple as that. But wait a minute. What happens when people don't agree on what a law actually means? Or, what if someone just straight up breaks the law? Well, that's where our third branch comes in. And honestly, for what we're talking about today, they're the most important piece of the puzzle. Think of them as the referees of the game. And that's the judiciary. We're talking about the courts and the judges. Now, their job is really unique because they don't make the laws, and they're not the ones out there enforcing them. Their super critical job is to interpret the law, to figure out what it's really saying, and then apply it fairly to settle all kinds of legal disputes. And believe me, the kind of work they do is massive. The civil courts, they hear it all. We're talking both civil and criminal cases. This can be anything from a private dispute between 2 people to a major public law case involving the government itself. And that power, that authority to hear a case and make a decision, that's what we call their jurisdiction. Okay, so we know the judiciary is made up of courts, but how are they all organized? It's not just one big courtroom. Let's take a little tour of the Malaysian court hierarchy, and we'll start right at the bottom and work our way all the way up to the very top. So the easiest way to think about it is that the whole system is basically split into 2 big categories. You've got the superior courts at the top and the subordinate courts down at the bottom. It's kind of like a pyramid of justice, really. All right, here it is, the full hierarchy. I know, it might look a little complicated at first glance, but I promise there's a logic to it all. Every single court you see here has its own specific place and its own job to do. So let's break it down together. Right at the very top of that pyramid, we have the superior courts. The absolute highest court in the entire country is the federal court. Just below it is the Court of Appeal. These top courts, they handle the really big, serious cases. And they're also where you go to appeal a decision from a lower court. And here's the really important part. Whatever they decide sets a precedent. That means their rulings become the guide for how all the other courts have to decide on similar cases in the future. Now, if we move one step down from the Court of Appeal, you'll see the system splits into 2. There are 2 high courts that run side by side, but they cover different areas. You have one high court for Malaya and another one that covers Sabah and Sarawak. And finally, we get down to the base of the pyramid, the subordinate courts. This is where most of the action happens, really. These courts, like the Sessions Court and the Magistrates Court, handle the vast majority of legal cases in the country. They're the true front line of the justice system. Okay, so we've looked at the 3 branches of government, and we've walked through the whole court hierarchy. But why? Why does it have to be structured this way? More importantly, what does all this mean for you, for the average person? Why does it matter? And this really gets to the heart of it. As the quote says, the whole system is made up of the courts and the judges inside them. It's so easy to think of this as just a bunch of rules and buildings, but it's not. At the end of the day, it's about people, judges, who have to listen to both sides and make tough calls based on the law.
So, what's the big takeaway here? The whole point of this entire setup, the separation of powers, the court hierarchy, is to protect something called the rule of law. It means everyone is subject to the law, no one is above it. The different branches keep each other in check so no one gets too powerful. And that court pyramid? It gives people a clear path to appeal decisions to make sure everything is fair. That's how you build a system where justice can actually be served.
And that brings us to one last question for you to think about. When you have judges and courts that are truly separate, truly independent from the politicians who make the laws and the officials who enforce them, how exactly does that protect your rights as just an ordinary citizen? Because that right there is the ultimate goal of this whole entire system.